So Delhi once again is overtaken by the protests that we are seeing. There is the new generation which is on the streets, led by Sonam Wangchuk. You personally also went and met him. The parliament is in session right now. What do you make of these protests?
This protest reminds me of the Anna Hazare movement. Now, the difference between Anna Hazare and Sonam Wangchuk is that during Anna Hazare time, the media was free and the media was covering everything of what Anna Hazare was doing. In Sonam Wangchuk, the media is not free. The media is completely regulated. So, Sonam Wangchuk was not getting any media space when he started this protest. Now, I was persuaded, my conscience told me that I should go and meet him to ask him to end his fast basically for two reasons. One, that I know for sure Mr. Sonam Wangchuk has done amazing amount of work in the field of education, and he has done all that selflessly, not like a school mafia which is enrolling students and making huge profits, but of people who can't afford education, of people who are deprived of the basics of education. He has worked amongst them and tried to educate them. So that's the credibility of Mr. Wangchuk. The second thing that moved me to go and meet him was the failure of our exam system. I mean, what has happened in the NEET exam this year is actually the tip of the iceberg. What we all know and what is there in the public domain, that this NEET paper in some form or the other is being leaked every year. There are students of affluent families, especially children of doctors, they get into NEET year after year. And for them, it is a very, if you ask me, economically viable proposition. Why is it economically viable? Whatever the money they spend for the purposes of getting a high NEET rank, that money is recovered by virtue of the fact that the children get into a government college. And in the government college, the fees are very less. So just see the effect of this in the society. A person who can afford to pay the fees of a private college gets into a government college by virtue of this manipulation of these NEET examination, or on the basis of the NEET examination paper leak, or on the basis of there are various ways in which this NEET examination leak happens. I don't want to elaborate here, but it is all known to everybody who is there, who gets into this system, that there are ways and means to do it. Sometimes the invigilators help, sometimes the coaching agency has some information of some question papers. Sometimes somebody else sits for you and takes the exam. This is called an engine as far as this field is concerned. And the affluent pays the money under the table, gets a government seat and pays minimal fees. The poor who can't afford to pay this fees or this, whatever the charges are there for this getting this paper, ultimately get into a lower, rank in the merit list, and they are forced to take the private college's seat, which also charge a huge amount of money. So it's a double jeopardy. Rich get into the government colleges, and the poor are forced to. And the poor invariably are unable to, pay that fees. And in fact, many private colleges are not able to admit students for that reason. And with the result that all kind of malpractices happen in the private colleges, and the merit list is completely distorted, because if the person in the rank who is a poor person cannot take that particular seat, then obviously the private college has the liberty to go down the merit list. And only because the person in the merit list can't afford to pay his fees, he keeps going down, and ultimately the seat goes to again a rich boy who probably didn't have the access to the NEET question paper, but his father still can afford to pay that extra money, and he ultimately gets, this seat. Now, this is a very important issue which has been raised by Mr. Wangchuk, and I feel that the government is not ready to address this issue. The government is only doing lip service. If you ask me, the ban on Telegram is an admission by the government that paper will be leaked this year also. And we don't want that paper which will be leaked should be disseminated by the medium called Telegram, because they don't have any control over Telegram. So they banned Telegram. So just see this complex situation that is created. There is an exam where lakhs and lakhs students prepare and take the exam in the hope that they'll be assessed by a impartial examination body, where they will secure the marks that they actually deserve to get by virtue of the fact that it is supposed to be a fair exam. You see how many suicides are happening these days of these young students who don't qualify in NEET. I mean, state after state, you will find young boys and girls committing suicide because their parents have sent them with their very little resources, tried to send them to a small coaching center in the hope that the children are studying hard, and once they get into the NEET examination, they get into a good medical college, their children's lives will be secure. And after having spent so much of money, some people send their land, some people, their mothers sell their jewelry to send these children for this coaching, etc. And when they come to know later on that the examination process itself was not fair, and because of which they have been deprived of the admission, just see the frustration that you get amongst the youth. So it's a very, very serious affair. I don't think the government has taken any bold step except for just holding an examination once again, and this time trying to create a situation where the persons who sent the question paper were, I believe, locked in and etc. and they were not allowed to meet anybody. But the people who are engaged in this business of selling these papers have their ways and means of getting into this access, and that is where there is a need for government to take very strong action to infuse credibility in this process, and Mr. Wangchu is basically fighting for that. So I think this was a very important issue which governs the youth of this country, and I think Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan needs to resign. I mean, there is something like a moral responsibility. If the examination is being held under your ministry, and if the examination is found to be not fair, admittedly found to be not fair, with such large scale corruption cases happening in this examination process, then to say that he will have no moral responsibility for the same is also not justified. So I think that is where we all stand. And today what has happened is also unfair. When children from all over the country who were peaceful protesters were wanting to march to the parliament, they were lathi charged very brutally. And again, like always, the mainstream media did not carry any of these lathi charges or dispersing of these mobs of these innocent people who were merely assembled to raise their grievance with regard to the credibility of the examination process. So I think this is a very important issue as far as what Mr. Wangchuk has raised, and every like-minded person in this country should introspect as to what he or she can do to see that this credibility of this process is maintained.